Hi everybody, it's me, Thomas again. I thought I'd do a little stream. Sometimes just to mix it up a little bit, or a recording, if you will, of the latest build. First thing, and go through some of the new things that have been added in the game, and just talk about them. So let's start off our little settlement. Let's start out up here because it's always cool. I'm using a controller today because that's smoother when recording the video. I don't actually want a pirate thing. Let's see if we can get something more interesting. Manser, that's interesting. Oh, here comes the sun. One of the things, before we get into the Manser build, that a few months ago I might have accidentally dragged the reflection of the sky / sun in the water in Unity somewhere, and it stopped working, and we haven't had reflected sunlight and reflected skylight, and I think forever since the demo has been online. But this is how it was supposed to look. I completely didn't notice that for months until I noticed it. So I brought back the sun. I refactored the water a bit. Refactoring meaning I fiddled with it until it's better. It's also a little bit more transparent, so we can actually see the fishes that have been there for ages. I have brightened up the shallows a little bit. That whale is not supposed to be in the shadows, but hey, bugs happen. And as you can see, that it's not just the sun that gets reflected in the water. It is the entire sky, so you get these gradients, and we can see the photo mode, and everything is just a tad. That's sunset. Let's see. Well, so the sun is up here somewhere. There it is. And when we go down, we should see it. You see, you can actually see, the entire sky coming, and it gives an entire much nicer feel to the environment, which is great. Anyway, so that got added back in. So one thing that got added a few weeks ago is the Manser citadels. So you can have Manser outposts, and they have their own build tree as were of and I'm in free mode, so I don't need resources. I can just mess about and show you stuff. And they have their own little buildings, which were sort of more or less in, and they've got a little bit of a polish. Added a few more for diversity. And it took a while before I had a style which didn't look too futuristic or out of place. The Manser is, in the lore of the Falconeer, it's a faction that normally handles all the technology. So they had, before the Giant War, the giant vaults of technology, and in an effort to kickstart the technological society, they would dole out certain technologies to warlords and kings and empresses under strict limitations, just to see what would happen and to get things going again, because the Ursui is such an inhospitable place. They weren't able, after the collapse, which is hinted at in the Falconeer, to rebuild a technological society. So it's the easiest way to say. There's a little bit like the Brotherhood of Steel, slightly less violent in a sense, in that they did this through permits and a caste system, and basically just experimenting without being the people behind the power, and having a sort of a religious connotation to that. They still exist in Bulwark, and you can play as them, and you can can ally with them later on in the game. And they are much diminished, but 40 years of war has also advanced everybody a little bit. And my idea is that everybody's been, including all the factions, been pillaging the vaults of the Manser as they've sort of lost the war and lost ground. And now, technology is a little bit more rampant. As you can see, some of the building styles are much more advanced than in the Falconeer. And this is their, style. So it's technological and imposing. Initially, I had it busier, and I iterated upon it last week a little bit, so that it's more you know, it has this facade, this split arched facade, which kind of looks like a face, but anything empty in a building, like the negative space, can also make it imposing. So I thought, it's kind of nice. Let's build another one. And they are supposed to be imposing, either well, you know, tragic and imposing. I'm not the Imperial. So high up my list for the people playing the demo is to make something that allows you to choose, especially in free build mode, but also in the regular campaign mode, what outpost you are built. And I'm actually trying to build another Manser one. So there will be a little widget, probably on the Q&E bindings, so which are also the floor up and the floor down if you have a big command tower. That's so annoying. Well, if not, I will skip it. We'll skip Imperials, but that wouldn't feel nice being built there. So you'll get a little notification what you got selected, like an inventory. You can say, okay, I want to drop a Manser outpost or one of the unit, not pirates. And then you don't have to do this, because a lot of people are asking, can I have something? Because sometimes I just want to build as pirates, and then I have to wait till it's randomly. It's there now just as a means to an end. I haven't had the time to develop that yet, but it's definitely coming. Because you can see I struggle with it as well. And now but we have this nice civilian. That brings us to the next part. One of the things that I've added is a bunch of new houses. So I did that for the... and with that, I mean the tiny ones you see around the citadel. So the Manser have one. And I've also added smaller buildings that open up a little bit more space. So that it's not that crowded all the time. And it's better, and you can see it better when we do a civilian type outpost. Let's build another one around here. Let's ignore the storm for a second. So it used to be that the houses were just smashed together, and that can still happen. But there's a few more objects, and I hope this one, like here, there is. You can see that on the bottom corner. A little square-ish wooden platform, light, but it just adds little space, and then these forces away other houses, so you can get a little street, as it were, or a little piazza, or you know. And then you can see that these are actually fairly similar houses. We should, if I build a little bit more, get some better houses. So I've added a lot more of the. Let's see. And it's hard to see because you don't know. So you have the... Let's wait till the sun comes up. Let's help it along a little bit. So let's go. We can see there's a few more. So these are the old houses. And then there's an extra class when things are getting better that gets built. Here we go. And you can see one of them... in the water there, the jewel scare, and we just need to build out. It is sort of... Oh, you can see them around here. So here, these are the more nicer houses. Some of these sort of existed, but I've updated them to be a little bit more beefier. So when you have a nicer place, instead of, you know, let's say a wooden walkway... well, it's all nice because they're all connected to... Let's get further away from these. They're all connected to the outpost, so they're higher. See, the house is getting a little bit, shittier, basically. But these have more solid foundations, and it does give a nicer, busier area. And sometimes you can really get these sort of cobblestone fishermen's places at some point. So a few more houses, and the placing is a bit more organic. Let's see if I can get some. I think I did. At some point, I added a few little fish to some of the builders here, but it's not spawning. So I've been fiddling with that, making it nicer. So actually, quite a lot of that in there. And I don't want another one of you. Give me anything else to talk about. Nee. That's annoying. Nah, the random... So people think random is really not that random in most 3D coding systems. And Unity's random is, I believe, just a table somewhere hidden away of random number, and it's not very good. As you can see, this is not really that random, or it's not. It's very repetitive. And now the video is going to be me trying to find something interesting to talk about. Ah, here we go. So I've always also done the same with the Imperial architecture. Let's connect it up. And I think after PAX, and we haven't spoken about this, is the virality of building styles. So it used to be that actually the fancy Imperial buildings would get spawned nilly-willy on really nice places. Now they are spawned around the citadels, and here you can see they have their own little, little piazza-esque lighting lantern obelisk that opens up the spaces. It makes it just, something like this looks actually... There's a house, there's a sheeper house. Some of it still looks a bit too random, like too next to each other. And like this is an ongoing process of making it more interesting to look at, because that's, that's part of the goal. But they also, which didn't happen before, is if I build... there is an influence factor per, per tower distance, just like the resource system. There is an influence factor that diminishes over time. So, the free houses, so the civilian, these guys have their own influence factor, as have the Imperial. So they start to mix. And for some reason, maybe because it's too far away, oh yeah, wait, maybe it's not connected to the Manser. So technically, and I hope the little demonstration works, when I hook up the Manser headquarters, citadel, you should see, yeah, here we go. We get a Manser building, and actually it should start to get mixed, because there's influences from each of the factions here. Let me just chuck some stuff in. Let's have another connection. See, and here are free house buildings are getting spawned together with Manser buildings. And if I were to do that, I'm making it complete. Some Imperial buildings got spawned alongside. So based on influence from such citadels, you can change basically who lives where. And the vibe of an area. So that is a new addition I did after PAX. So it's out. Oh, that's an update already 2 weeks ago. But that's quite an interesting. It's more, how do you call it? A more dynamic, proper system. So now even some Manser buildings are being spawned all the way over here. It both makes the towns a little bit more eclectic. And it makes sense, and you can actually have some steerage. I call steerage, that's not a word. Some direction you can give to your settlement by decided by what citadel you place where. And the same goes. So we don't have any faction. We have free house captains. So if I were to move those there. Let's connect it. That would be, they also influence. So a commander does also influence. So let's build a little fort. And build it nice and high. Because we have some new stuff. So if I were to use one of the Manser commanders you get for free in the free build. I can turn this into and most people haven't figured out, but you can go up and down with the Q and E buttons on your keyboard or the D-pad and add stuff from different floors. And instead of having these towers that fatten out on the top, they can fatten out at the bottom and look just a tad more realistic. But if I add someone and we had them... What happened to his eye patch? Oh, bugs. I added a new guy in the free mode, in the free build mode. He doesn't have an event yet in the campaign mode, but he will. And that is an Imperial commander, the first one. And he actually spawns what's called a Thunderstrike. And these are quite common in the Falconeer. I gave him a little update for the modern shading and stuff for Bulwark. He needs a few more things, maybe even more guns, because they're quite a militaristic society. And this will also influence more the faction dominance of the Imperials. Just by having that commander there, that is now sort of the same as the Citadel. So the more special the commander, the higher its influence. Oh yeah, and these also have, I think, if I move away, he will factionalize this. Yeah, so these have their own little faction design. The entire, if I, personally, I like it empty. You do get some of these floating buildings occasionally. I haven't figured out how to, because you build it on top of something, and then it sticks it there to make it fit, and then you remove something, and something can end up floating. Because these are thousands of triangles, hundreds of buildings, or maybe even already. So I can't physically track them all to be physicalized, not without some much fancier tech that would restrict the game. And more difficult for me to... So I don't have a solution yet. But it might be nice that it gets auto-removed at some point. There's a system that goes through all the houses and checks if they're still legal. So if you start building out on top of stuff, once in a minute or so, it will have passed through all the buildings there and removed those ones at the bottom. Because, you can't see them, so why have them? So, I am actually this new commander building is also a new style for the Imperium, something that fits their sort of nice citadel, Romanesque, whatever you want to call it, Byzantine looks. Also a little bit more Art Deco, as you can see. Maybe you can find some a nicer. Let's see if we can find a nice. Lighting moment for it. I started quite like the sunsets because they're a little bit brighter now with the sun reflected. Anyway, so you can see it's nice and regal. It's all gold trimmed, and for some reason air, and it's more a gameplay reason. Dockyards for airships need to be on top of buildings. That is just my funny brain. The old command tower is getting a full smooth over look. So on the Manser, if we build a Manser command tower, here's to compare, blah blah blah. We'll do a quick one. Let's do there. It had this more tacked on kit bashing look, but I wanted that wouldn't work for the Imperials. So I wanted their tower takeover to be more smooth and integrated. So that's what I've done here. And for the other commanders I will have to make for the Imperials, I'll revert back to these sort of details and the sort of how do you call it, radiator-esque Art Deco, Art Nouveau feel just chucked in there. It's a game about architecture, but I'm not really adhering to the styles, just finding interesting visual styles that sort of fit together. I think, it's a nice contract to the Manser, which have really a slightly more evil look, even though they aren't evil. But they care less about, I guess, being anything other than intimidating. So that's some new stuff. I think if we can try, if we're lucky, we need to find a high spot. We're doing this. Other work has been done on bridges. So previously you couldn't cross this. Now you can always cross a body of water as long as it's within reach, and it'll build a raised bridge that will open and close depending on where you set it, etc., etc. If you do small hops, so less than 3, let's see if we can find one, you get a non-raised, how do you call it, a fixed bridge. or an arch bridge, depending on your. And you can hop along. So if you do small hops, I've tried to look for the. It doesn't always needs to be over water. So that's actually a too long one, and I'm still fiddling with it. So let's see if we can make it. So something like this distance should make a little bridge. It's actually not enough deep water. You want to show something and then it doesn't happen. So it needs to detect beneath it a little bit of water again, and it does need to be quite fairly short. Go away. Let's see if we can make it happen. Well, out of luck. So, but if you fiddle long enough, it's there we go. And you can upgrade these, of course, and have it be. Why doesn't it do it now? I don't know. It's interesting. So it's just there we go. So that's the different small bridges, and then you have long. We used to have, and we still have. If you go to a upper, we could do the skyways. So these are the ones we know when they pass across water. They would make how do you call it? Suspension bridges. So normally, and someone on I think Steam asked if we could have a suspension bridge without these vertical pillars, because when you do them really, really high, they would just float in nowhere or stick halfway through rocks and look really silly. So actually, I did that, and you can see a little bit there on the edge, there's a little new bridge section, and it depends on the height where you build. So if you build higher than a certain height, it's about this height, you get suspension or how do you call it? Arched elements. Let's see if we can go even higher. No, I think this is it. It will either... so here's a halfway point. So the bridge isn't long enough to require arches, but it is long enough to remove the individual... So the distance in a minute is removing the vertical spans. I don't know, the vertical pillars as well. So you have something that doesn't have floaty, stupid bits. And maybe we can find a way... really go up as ridiculous and see if we can connect it somewhere. No. Sometimes you can make bridges that are slightly longer than 10 pips. No, not there. I want it higher. So even I sometimes have difficulty gauging the 3D depth of things. So here we go. So this is high enough that it realizes having vertical supports is stupid. Let's do arched bottom arched bits. It looks quite nice. When you go up really high, then you don't have the problem of it sticking to the floor. It is somewhat fanciful. That's some really great concrete that can do that. Nevertheless, everything in Bulwark is sort of fanciful, but it feels a little bit more, how do you call it, grounded, that there is also this type of bridge you can build that doesn't have any of these arched supports, whereas if you go lower, you get this. That sort of makes sense, and it does add a really nice aesthetic. These long ones are quite, well, you can make them as silly if you want, but if you make them short, they get to be quite nice. I quite enjoy them when I... No, I don't want to. I don't know why his eye patch is gone. I actually do know. Sometimes when I export, I overcompress the models, and that's happened with the portraits. So that's actually, I like this the best. It figures it only can do one, and the end side had, you know, a little bit of height to it, and so you get this sort of graceful. So that is new as well. Another thing that is new. Before, when you had units they would just do their own thing, and they'd always trail behind you when you flew off to go out and do combat or meet new people. They've got a little speed boost so that they can stick around without feeling ridiculous when you close. And they're also aiming towards your mouse, so not yourself. So you can point them, and they can fly ahead of you. So and you can see the Weaver when the distance between. So now it starts to speed up and accelerate, so it stays with you. And that actually, to me, looks more like an actual battle group. That's useful to have them around to protect you, and you can go off and in the future, conquer another settlement, which is coming, or defend your own or staying in. Other people have asked if they could have a way where you could have your units sort of idling or patrolling your own area. I think there's, like I said, I want to make everything control minimal, because also I need to make it by myself, so I can't make endless quality of life, or sometimes the handiest feature for players is too complicated to make or support, and it adds too much work for me. So I have to always make either minimal interfaces, not just because I like it and it's unique, but also to make sure I can keep developing it. So for this, instead of I can't have an entire clickety left command move attack orders like a proper RTS. I do have a map, so one of the options might be to go, use one of your buttons, right mouse button, instead of building here. Have something that makes a custom map pin, much requested, but also maybe an attack pin or, defend here. And the idea mostly is what I want to achieve is that you can fly out to a command tower, get some units and fly off. But that if that command tower is then attacked, it can also spawn its own units or any you haven't picked up. And defend itself, so that there is a defensive function or patrolling function for units as well. But it's going to be something weird, because that's how it works. So I think that is all the new stuff for the last couple of weeks. Just run through me, and like I said, we saw some bugs with the portraits. I will update that immediately. There's lots of new stuff, especially during the daytime when the sun comes in and you see the water shine up. It is a little bit more, it just pops a bit more. It's a bit brighter. It's not as, monotonous, the ocean. That's just the sun reflection doing its work. Really happy with how it looks. Draw distance is decent. Performance has gone down a little bit. I'm recording this, and it's doing 50 FPS in the corner. Normally it does 90 on this machine where it was 100. That is the added reflections and quality improvements I've made to fog and the ocean and stuff like that. Nevertheless, this is just a 2060 running it at about 100 FPS when I'm not using OBS, so not recording basically. So I think performance is still good. Let me know if that's the case for you. All this stuff will lead to issues, bugs, stuff. It's all brand new. It's an evolving demo. So if you play the demo and you see stuff that isn't right, let me know and I can fix it. If you have something like a crash, go to Discord and download the logs, which you can find in Windows user directory / your username / app data / locallow / wired production and then player.log. Send me that in a Steam DM or Discord or even wherever you find it, and that's sometimes helpful to figure out what is causing a crash. But thanks for watching. Chatty, interesting stuff, hopefully, and let me know if I should do more of these slightly unorganized, messy recordings.